Hello everyone. Today I am coming out with the second version of my Secret Hitler guide. I'm updating it a bit to because a lot has changed in about the 2 months since I last released it. New players have risen up and changed tiers a bit, as well as I've started to develop the theory for the meta a bit more to talk about that. So, for starters, I'll talk about some more of the meta theory for why it's good, because after all, that's the most important part of the meta. So, I have just realized that for greens, like greens will greens will listen to people who play blues. So a lot of people are saying, Gio, why don't you just triangle the noobs and then let the pros on the wing salt? And that's certainly a good strategy to do. Not a lot of time, but in certain situations, especially in games with 5 pros and 2 noobs, it's good to just give them government so that, as Manu would say, they shut up. But there is a problem with that, and I'll go into the details for why the just regular geometa of triangling the pros over the reverse geometa of triangle noobs is better. And it's because we've all had those games where there's a pro-fascist and a pro-liberal and a green in the middle, and both of the pros are trying to sheep the green to get them to solve. Sometimes it's multiple greens. And if you remember your green games, you'll remember that most of the time you SC'd people and you listened to people based on whether or not they played blues. It's really as simple as that. That's why greens care so much about the fourth blue and other silly, stupid nonsense. But the point of that, of why and how this relates to the geometa anyways, is that the geometa lets those pros play those blues, because if there's a pro-liberal and a pro-fascist and neither of them have touched the deck, I find that a lot of the times the greens will kind of get sheeped out of fascists, because the fascists will have time to kind of butter them up beforehand. They can kind of speak on their level a bit more. It's kind of suspect if you're a liberal and you're talking at a green elo level when you're a pro. There's just all sorts of advantages that the fascists have when it comes to sheeping greens. And that's one of the more powerful parts of the geometa, I think, is that it makes it so that greens will listen to you. It makes it so that other liberals will listen to you if you're a pro-liberal, because it forces you in government, and it lets you show that you are liberal by playing blues. And noobs will see that you're playing blues, and they'll value that, and they'll like you for that reason. There was also another point that I had brought up. This is kind of metagamey a bit, but the idea is that even if you bring pros into play, and there are a lot of pro-fascists, and you give the pro-fascists too much influence over the game, and they win because of that, which doesn't happen that often if you're good, but sometimes it does. And something that I kind of found against what I'd say is the geometa's biggest weakness, which would be triangling with 2 pro-fascists, is that if you lose the 2 pro-fascists, you're not losing that much elo. You're losing 5 elo. You're losing 3 elo. The geometa was kind of a way to get yourself lots of elo, and it's really good at really just undoing its greatest weakness, because if you lose the 2 pro players, that's 3 elo, that's nothing. And if you triangle with 1 pro-fascist and they have to take themselves out, then you can take their elo. Or if you happen to beat both, and if you can beat both, you get both their elo, but that's kind of less important. What I'm trying to say here is that the losses attributed to the geometa, you lose only a little bit of elo, and the wins you get from it, you either get an average amount of elo, or you force a pro to take themselves out, and then you can steal their elo too, because their fascist teammates will throw, like I said in the first video. So it's you either lose a little bit because of the meta. You could probably blame some of the losses of two fascists in the triangle on the meta itself. I think that's a fair criticism to make. But again, you're losing like 3 elo. That's 5 elo. That's not a big deal, you know. But like, and then all of these other times, you're gaining like 8 elo, 14 elo, like these ridiculous amounts because of the meta. So overall, it's a benefit. Like the weaknesses kind of work themselves out to like nullify it. Like it doesn't really matter that much. So those are the two new additions to the theory of the geometa, I'd say. And now we can just talk about the changes, because we have some new people, some new trends that I've noticed myself when using the meta, and I've moved people to their different spots that I feel are more accurate now. And I've added some new people too. So, to start, I added Ploy to the inflated elos tier, or the tier 3, as I'd say. This is tier 1, by the way. This is tier 2, and this is tier 3. I'll delete these because they're ugly. Don't like them here. But, so Ploy hit 2,000 recently, and to be honest, I think he did it because he kind of outslipped a lot. Nothing wrong with that, as long as he's not stalling or cap spamming. If you out-liberal in other ways, that's pretty good. You're doing part of your job really well. Of course, I think his 2K was more attributed to him doing a good job at making himself look liberal and having other people help him out. Kind of like me in many ways. And except I'm a bit better now. As I can see, I've moved here. I'll talk about that later. This is about Ploy, not about me. I'm being self-censored. So, Ploy, don't be offended to be in this tier. The fact that you're in this tier, alone, means that you're good enough, to deserve to be talked about. Like, you're really good at making yourself look liberal without being scummy about it by stalling and capsing. And, that's something that's worth rewarding. But the geometa purpose is that the purpose of the geometa is to kind of play governments with people who are good at solving the games themselves, rather than allowing themselves to be solved. In a way, I think Ploy might have utilized the geometa a lot to get to where he is, and as a result, he wasn't one of the ideal candidates to really pick. But at the same time, like, being in tier 3 doesn't mean you're bad. It doesn't. It's something to be proud of. So, great job Deploy for making it to the list. And now we'll move on to the next ones. So, I moved myself into tier 2. And the reason why I chose to do this is because my social medias are starting to develop. Medusa's been teaching me how to play, really nice of him. And, I'm starting to play a lot better. I hit 1900 again recently. So, if you actually remember Rivestar in his defaming and live video about me, he said that I'd never hit 1900 playing with this. Well, Rivestar, I got news for you, bud. Look at this. Ooh, ouch. GioIzHawt's 1914 elo. That hurts, doesn't it? So yeah, I hit 1900s again, and I think, of course, what tier it isn't really about your elo. It's more about how good you are at solving, and the reason why I put myself into this elo range is because I've gotten better at solving myself. I'm developing some social reads thanks to Medusa. So, that's me. One-on-one or unanimous is in tier 2. He's another 2K player who I'd say is inflated. He plays pretty solidly most of the time, but sometimes he just has these really random throws. It's just like, but what are you doing? It's I don't know. He throws fairly often, about as much as a tier 2 would. So I'm starting to think that, maybe he just got on a luck streak or something. Or I don't know. He's a tier 2 player. That's not bad. To be on this list is something you should be happy about. And same thing with Nier. I've been playing with him a lot. He is, really good. He has another 1900 account, but he does still kind of like throw sometimes a little bit. I haven't noticed him throw that much recently, to be honest. Like, in like 3 weeks, he could be over here really recently. He's been playing super solidly, and he's almost gotten his ult to 2K2. So his other ult to 2K2, Evil Gone. So like, it's really debatable like what tier he falls in, but I'm gonna put him in here for now. He's been playing very solidly, and expect to see him come over here too. He's a new 2K though, so I'm gonna show some hesitance and leave him here for now. Although, keep an eye out for him. I think he'll be over here soon. And some changes would be Ray, aka High. I decided to distinguish what tier he is in based off of whether he is sober or drunk. And the reason for doing this is because, again, Ray was always a tier 1 player when he tries and shares his reads. But most of the time he's like AFK and not really paying attention. And I mean, I love Ray for it, he's our boy. Everyone loves Ray. Oh, it's like the show Everybody Loves Raymond, but like with Ray. Just kind of like that. But like, I just left in my foot of a book and it fell. Anyways. But yeah, Ray is a 2K player. The reason why he's not in tier 1, because he is a tier 1 player, it's that the reason he's not there is because the Geo meta is about getting people in play who can share their reads and help carry the game. And Ray is he just doesn't talk that much when he's sober. But when Ray is drunk, he's really talkative. Well, he talks a decent amount anyways. And because of that, drunk Ray will share his reads, and he'll help you solve. So, drunk Ray is a tier 1 player, and sober Ray is a tier 2 player, I'd say. Like, again, listen to what he says. When Ray talks, no matter what he is, you always treat him as a tier 1 player, no matter whether he's sober or drunk. This is when it comes to the investigation power, because you don't want to investigate someone who's going to be AFK or mute, not really talking that much. So this is where it's different. You should investigate a drunk Ray generally. Maybe one of these players would be better if you can help it, because it's kind of hard to judge how drunk someone is, but just in general, when you get the investigation power, and there's a bunch of maybe a high tier 2, like Evil Gone or Ray, ask Ray, are you drunk or sober? And if he says that he's drunk, investigate him. He's a tier 1 player. He should be treated like a tier 1 player in all cases when he's drunk. And when he's sober, make an exception for the investigation and treat him like a tier 2. And don't investigate him, but again, when he talks, treat him like a tier 1. Give him the respect he deserves. Okay. And the next change in the list is QSIF. So, QSIF was apparently always mellow. I actually didn't know this at the time. But I still actually agree with putting QSIF and mellow in separate tiers in my first video. When I first met the QSIF alt account, he's an alt of mellow. I already said that, but when I first met the alt of QSIF, he was pretty chillax, not really taking the game too seriously, kind of fun. And it's like, yeah, I think he was trying to kind of hide who he was, so he was kind of taking the game less serious about how he was playing. That's why, because he didn't want to out his identity, mellow. But recently, QSIF, he's starting to play Mellow's starting to play like he does on Mellow on QSIF 2. When I first played with QSIF, I threw pretty frequently, and I didn't get blacklisted. And now, bro, you do one thing wrong, smash! He smashes that blacklist button. And then you just have to watch while he just sits in a lobby with a bunch of people worse than you, whilst, kind of pettily like, haha, you don't get to play with me, ha ha ha. And then he's the only one making the 1700 lobbies, and then, then you just can't do shit because everyone's playing with Mellow and he has you DL'd for no reason. even though there's like 100 game players in the room with him. Yeah, he's doing that shit now. He has the large ass blacklist, and he gets a big boner whenever he fucking talks about it. Don't get me wrong, Mello. I love you. We're good friends and stuff. I'd say one of my secretly friends, but at the same time, like, yeah, Cusif. This helps the real deal now. He tries on it 100% more. This is a tier 1 account, and he's just like, yeah. Alright, so, and lastly, Secret Drab, everyone's boy, besides me, well, he's like step boy behind Ray Ray. He has hit tier 1, 2. He just hit 2K today. I'm so proud of him. And this was actually the event that inspired me to make the video, because this is a huge deal. We have a new 2K player, and Jeb was like, "Gio, you gotta make the video so people know to treat me like a tier 1 now." And of course, you're like, "Gio, why, when people hit 2K, you don't immediately put them to tier 1? But to be honest, Jeb was already a high tier 1. He had like a high tier 2. He had like 4,000 games or some shit. He hit 2,000. He's tier 1 now. Treat him like it. And we have some new additions to the list too, besides Drunk Ray and Secret Jeb. Taj, aka, Pivot, he changed his name to God Hemzevel, or to, what's the other one? I can't think of his other alt at the moment. So it's God Hemzevel. I think it's just Taj. Yeah, it's just Taj. I'm so stupid. So yeah, Taj, aka Pivot or God Hemzevel. Freakin' and Carl Goss. This is important. He has a blue name. So I know you normally resign to purples besides the exceptions listed here and talked about here, such as these two. These two are also exceptions that I listed here. Anyways, so yeah, treat Kyle like he's purple. He's earned it. He's like a 2K player. Okay, so you might think that this is it, but it's not, because there's a new category. Superstar players. See it? And now, what a superstar player is a player who is just so good and so influential that you treat them with more priority over the other pros. So for instance, Medusa and Manu. So if you have to choose between a triangle with one of these pros versus Medusa or Manu, and you're wondering, who do I include? You include Medusa and Manu. If you're wondering if you should even triangle at all, because there's like a full pro lobby in the room, if Medusa and Manu are there, even just one of them, triangle with them, because they're superstars. They're so important to the game, to the games that they're in, that they are worth triangling with to find out the role and to find out their reads, because they're just that good. They're just on another level than these players. So Medusa and Manu are superstar players. And again, this isn't to say that they are the best in this lot, because you can certainly argue that some of your players are better than them. What I'm saying is that they are the best at, really like spoon feeding you the game. And that's what the Geo meta is all about, finding players to spoon feed the game for you. Although I personally would argue these guys are the best, but in general, but anyways, the reason these guys are over here is because they are great at convincing people what to do, why it's good, and they have great reads. They're influential players. They dictate the games that they are in. They're in full control in the games that they are in. So that's why it's essential that they are played. I've seen games with Medusa where he's doing like all this like off meta, Medusa switch, like hitty test, like elevator strat, like godness, and like that stuff. It just influences the game to such a high amount that you need to know what role he is. And Manu, when Manu sits in the room, everyone's like, "Manu, what do I do?" In some games, Manu literally just lists which govs to play in every order, and people just do it. It's just the way they play. Even if he's in conflict, they'll still listen to Manu. And that's why it's so important to listen to these players. And also, I know that this is a guide for liberals, but if you're a fascist and you see one of these two, triangle with them and pretend you're doing the geometa as liberal, and then just conflict them. Take them out. They're too good as liberal to be left in play. Get rid of them. Take them out of the game. Conflict them. Same. I would argue the same for most of these guys too. Again, though, this is a guide for liberals, not for fascists. Like, it's just kind of a coincidence that like you can take good players out as fascists too. Another benefit of the geometa is that it doesn't hurt your game as fascist. So it actually would probably make it better, I'd argue. So yeah. I hope you enjoyed this guide. Thank you for watching. Enjoy. Bye.